Hi, John Fox Ward here. I just wanted to say a couple words before I bring on Bob Moriarty. And for those who listen to the ABCs of IBC podcast, I had some food for thought. Not investment advice, as they say, but it is food for thought. One is often people say, well, um, I can invest in treasuries or US debt, American debt, um, myself directly, and often through qualified plans like 401ks and 403bs. Often these are structured, these mutual funds are structured, weighted, say 60% stocks and 40% bonds, which are the debt, treasury debt. Um, And I ask you this food for thought question. If you were buying bonds through your IRA or 401k, 403b, etc., are they offering you a death benefit on top of that? Are they paying you dividends on top of that? And the answer is no. So if your portfolio is set up, your mutual funds are set up as a 60% stocks, equities, and 40% bonds, cash, so to speak, then you probably should take that 40% and push it through a permanent whole life insurance policy. And so just something to question me about, put comments about that in the show, in the comments section. And without further ado, I'm going to bring Bob on. I'm going to pause the recording. All right. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Once again, I have Bob Moriarty with me, owner of 321gold.com, also a prolific writer, ex-Marine fighter pilot in Vietnam, flew the most amount of missions ever in the history of America. Over there, over 800 missions. And so, hello, Bob. Thanks again for joining and having a further conversation about I mean, I think we talked maybe 3 weeks ago, and it's amazing how much new stuff just keeps popping up. And one of the things for me personally, and I'll let you talk, is it is this game. Feels like of distraction. Like, my head's spinning because there's so much new stuff and revelations, or what seems like revelations. So I do know that a little bit of that is happening to you, and it's not good. So what's on top of your list of maybe concerns, or what's running around in your head most of the time, of what's going on in the world right now?
Uh, there are some really serious things. I mean, if I was to list the most important, it would have to be Israel intending another attack on Iran. And
Mm,
I said on June 12th that it was the opening of World War III. And should there be another attack, there will be no question that we're in World War III. So that's the most crucial, but I think obviously the most interesting. Okay, here's the deal. If World War III happens, it's going to be a 72-minute war and we're all going to be gone.
mm.
Okay, so we don't have to spend too much time worrying about it because we're all going to be dead. But there's some interesting shit going on that we can talk about as long as we're still around. And that certainly would have to be Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, yeah, crazy. Like, it does seem like he's really stepped in it at this point, and he's off balance. I think this has gotten out of control for him, but yeah, I certainly want to know your thoughts on what's
Well,
going on.
that's a good point. And here's what I would like to point out. you don't know what happened. I don't know what happened, but there is one person who knows what happened, and that's Donald Trump. And the man is so arrogant that one of his most important selling points to the voters prior to the election was, I'm going to release the Jeffrey Epstein information and tapes and lists. Now, he knows he was Jeffrey Epstein's best friend for years. He knows he ran a modeling agent that imported young underage women from Eastern Europe, and he turned over to Lex Wetzler and Jeffrey Epstein. Okay. He may as well have been procuring for Jeffrey Epstein. And for him, somebody sent me something. I'm not absolutely certain that it's correct, but it feels correct. That
Hmm.
Donald Trump's been sued over 6 times for having sex with underage women, and he settled for over $30 million. Now, because I haven't seen any court documents, I can't tell you if that's absolutely true or not, but I think so. So you've got this guy who sells himself to the voters. I'm going to tell you everything that's going on, and he knows the whole time that he's dirtier than anybody else involved, except Jeffrey Epstein himself and Ghislaine Maxwell. So it's a bizarre situation. My opinion is Donald Trump just wrote his epitaph. I don't think there's any way out for him. Now, are you a pilot?
No, I am not.
Okay. How good are you at math and circles?
In circles? I don't know. I was pretty good at maths, but so give it a
Okay,
go.
here's the math. How do you do a 720?
It's two circles, two 360s.
No, it's four 180s.
Oh, okay.
You, you do a 180, and then you do another
Oh,
180, and
I
then you
see where
do
you're.
another 180,
Yeah,
and then you
yeah,
do another 180. And
yeah.
if
Flip
that
flop.
sounds to you like Donald Trump's
There
game
you go.
plan, Donald Trump is a master of doing 720s. The longer he's president, okay, the more I am astonished at what he keeps coming up with. Now, the prime minister of Israel showed up a week or so ago, and he wanted to meet with Trump, and he did meet with Trump. And when the meeting concluded, something happened that's very unusual. And it's something you have to point out for anyone to understand. You got any idea what happened in this meeting that hasn't happened in any other meeting with Donald Trump and the president or the prime minister of another country? Something really unusual happened.
No, I don't.
There was no press conference.
Oh,
There
okay.
was nothing put out about what the purpose of the meeting
Oh,
was.
oh, wow. Yeah,
So,
that's
what you have to do is you have to look at the background, you have to look at the newspaper, you have to look at CNN and see what happened immediately after that so you could figure out what they talked about. Now, what happened immediately after the meeting between Netanyahu and Donald Trump?
I can say I don't know much about the meeting. No.
Well, you don't, okay? But that's why we're trying to figure out what happened. And the way to figure it out is what happened afterwards. What's the
Well, I do
first thing
know
Donald
that,
Trump did?
yeah, well, I do know that we um started sending more weapons to Ukraine, right?
Bingo, that's one of them. That's called a 180. And if you do enough 180s, you get to a 720. But the other thing that happened just prior to that was Donald Trump said, oh, by the way, there's nothing in the Jeffrey Epstein documents. We need to bury that. It's a Democratic hoax.
Oh, sure,
And
sure.
I
Yeah.
listened to that and thought, golly, I wonder if Bibi Netanyahu came to Washington to give Donald Trump his marching orders.
Yeah.
And my
Or to
conclusion was, yep, yep.
Wouldn't you think it would in some ways to me it's like it's a reminder. Let me come and remind you of what your marching orders are. Because
Uh,
sometimes it feels like, this had to have been laid out. I never feel like Trump would have been president unless he was connected to all these people. To the you know.
that, that's a really good point, but I'll go you something that's even better. Because my wife died 6 years ago, and I've got two dogs for companions, and they don't speak English, they speak French. Okay. So I don't have very much of an interesting conversation. So I spend a lot of time on the web, and I have access to a lot of information that everybody else could have access to. I have seen three different reports saying Jeffrey Epstein is still alive. And one of them said, actually, it was a video of Jeffrey Epstein speaking. And he said in the video that Donald Trump has been told, okay, by Epstein and Netanyahu, that he will do exactly what they tell him to do, or they'll assassinate him. Now, let me ask you kind of a trick question. Would it be beyond the reach of Israel to assassinate a foreign leader?
No.
Hell, they do it all the time. Okay,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
did it to Kennedy. They did it to
yeah,
Robert Kennedy. Okay,
yeah,
they tried to do it in Iran. They did it to the Hezbollah. They did it to Hamas. Israel
yeah.
thinks that assassination is a perfectly acceptable weapon of war. Now,
Sure,
everybody that's ever studied warfare would disagree with that. Okay, all they've done is brought back assassination to the Middle East. But could that be true? And the answer is, of course, it could be.
sure, sure. Yeah, well, America hasn't been free. It hasn't been free of this control since the beginning, really. Certainly since after the Civil War, we were never free. I don't feel. They've been running the show. They kill whether we kill, well, we're part of the killing of other leaders, right? So, we're part of the whole team.
Well, and it's true. Bibi Netanyahu is on YouTube saying 40 years ago that Israel controls the House Senate. And, I hate to say it, it's now very obvious to everyone. So, would they assassinate Trump if he didn't do what he was told? Probably.
Yeah. I mean, they always, if anybody's a problem for them, they get rid of them. That's how
Yeah,
it happens.
exactly. Now,
There's been
I'll
there's
go you
been
one
many
better.
accidents.
Well, I'll go you one better. And I argue in my books that ordinary people using facts and logic, if they learn to ask the right questions, they can determine what's really going on all by themselves. Okay, on June 13th, Israel attacked Iran. A couple of days later, Donald Trump said, oh, yeah, I knew that was going to happen. He pretended he was part of the decision making process.
Oh, right,
But
right.
using facts and logic, I can prove to you he was not part of the equation. It was a surprise to him. Okay,
Yeah.
here's the fact.
Hmm.
Trump had initiated a series of meetings between the Iranians and the United States to negotiate the so-called weapons program that never existed in the first
Right,
place.
right.
Okay, the attack took place on a Friday. When
Hmm.
was the next meeting supposed to be?
I have no idea.
Sunday.
Okay. Yeah. So he had no
Okay,
idea.
who did the Israelis assassinate on Friday?
Oh, the head of the military in Iran?
No, worse. The guy that Trump was negotiating with.
Oh, jeez.
Now,
Okay.
one of the rules of negotiating at high levels is you don't assassinate the guy that you're negotiating with. It makes you look really bad.
Yeah.
And
Right.
everybody kind of ignored that. I saw that and thought, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Donald Trump didn't know anything about the timing of that attack.
Right.
Okay. That
Right.
that's like really, really bizarre. So
Yeah.
so
That's a great
uh,
point. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you
uh,
for
I'm convinced Donald Trump has buried himself. I don't think there's any way out. I think that he's going to keep dabbling pieces of information. They talk about a list of perpetrators,
right.
and the FBI has come out definitively and said there is no list. Is there any way that's possible?
No.
No, actually, it is possible. Why would he make a list? Jeffrey Epstein had 10,000 hours of videos. He could go turn his television on and
Oh,
see. He
sure.
didn't need to make a list.
Yeah,
So
a formal
when
list.
yeah,
But there's
exactly. When
but
the
there's
FBI says a list, yeah, of course, there was no list. There wasn't any reason for a list. But if you want to find out who the perpetrators are, plug your hard disk into your computer, sync it to the television, you can play it and you can watch them. The numbers are staggering. According to the FBI, it's not Bob Moriarty's numbers. According to the FBI, there were over 1,000 victims. According to the FBI, there were more than 10,000 hours of videos. Okay. According to records, do you understand that if you're carrying a cellular phone, there are data brokers that can track where you come and go?
sure.
Several years ago, somebody tracked all of the cell towers around Jeffrey Epstein's island, and they tracked 1,000 people who had come to the island. Now, when a guy comes to the island, okay, you don't know who he is. You just know that there was a cell phone, okay,
Right, right,
that
right.
came to the island. But when he leaves and he goes home, you could figure out who the guy was.
Hmm.
Okay, so there were 1,000 people who were tracked. Now, I'm not alleging that 1,000 people were perpetrators. It could be
Right.
more than that, or it could be less than that. I don't
Sure.
know. But
Sure.
1,000 people, including four former prime ministers of Israel, 21 billionaires, some of the biggest names in the country, including Bill Clinton flying on
Mhm.
Jeffrey Epstein's airplane uh, 26 times. But Jeffrey Epstein was a gourmet cook, and I'm certain that Bill Clinton was not interested in young women. He was interested in gourmet food.
Yeah, we all know that that's what his top interest was. Yeah.
Well,
Oh.
Ghislaine Maxwell has said she would be more than happy to testify in front of Congress, and she would be happy to name names. Now, since she's in prison for 20 years, she's got a lot of incentive to talk,
Well,
okay?
you know
And she
that.
could answer,
Thank you for
yeah,
bringing her up. Yeah, thank you because
yeah.
I mean, if Jeffrey was killed, why wouldn't she be killed? I mean, if it was, you know. he
Well,
said they made it
let's
out that he
use
killed himself, but of course he's not dead,
no,
probably. And
let's
she
use
she would have been
fact
the same would have happened to her, right?
let's use facts and logic.
Yeah.
Okay. Jeffrey Epstein was given $2 to $3 billion.
Okay.
He never graduated from college.
Hmm.
Okay. He was handed the keys to a $77 million mansion in New York City, the biggest private residency in the entire city. He was given the property. Was Jeffrey Epstein a Mossad agent?
Agent. Yeah, I would think
Okay,
so.
if he was a Mossad agent, if you go back to the entire history of the Mossad, do you know what their motto is?
No,
By way of deception.
by way of deception. Okay.
Okay, if you go back through the entire history of the Mossad, would there ever be anyone more important to Israel than Jeffrey Epstein? Probably not.
Doesn't seem so. I
Okay.
mean, he had,
Would they let him rot in a New York prison? Eh, probably not. Okay.
yeah.
Now, Ghislaine Maxwell has been interviewed, and I have watched the interview on YouTube. And she said the only person that Jeffrey Epstein was ever afraid of was Hillary Clinton.
Oh,
And Hillary Clinton was a guest. And the suggestion from Maxwell was also a participant. And she was so cruel that some of the girls that she molested needed stitches. Okay. That is the definition of evil.
yeah.
So that's going to be an interesting saga. But then what happened a couple of days ago that was interesting?
Was there some charges against Obama?
And Clapper and Brennan
Okay.
and Mueller. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
What is the most important word that Tulsi Gabbard used in her press release?
Uh, well, she actually said there was well, she used the word coup.
No, no, even worse.
Okay. Um, I'm not sure.
How about treason?
Treason, yeah. Yeah. That was the yeah, I
Okay.
was gonna say that, yeah.
Treason is one of those words in the Constitution that there is a death penalty for. Now,
Right.
we have gone
Why?
from the insane into the absolutely, totally, categorically world class, universe class insanity. We have a former president who set up with the head of the FBI, the head of the CIA, the national security environment to maintain a years long coup against Donald Trump while he was presidency. And Mueller investigated it. He didn't find anything. Durham investigated and he didn't find anything. Are you shitting me? How did they miss it? It was obvious to anybody that paid any attention to that it was fraud. That's like going back to the Hunter Biden laptop. The FBI said, we don't know if that's really Hunter Biden's laptop. Yeah, of course
Mm.
they did. They had the serial number. They talked to Hunter Biden. They knew it was his.
Yeah.
And James Clapper got 51 intelligence professionals to say that it had the hallmarks of a Russian disinformation. Now then, where am I going with this? It gets worse.
Okay.
Okay. Did you listen to what Chairman Xi said this week?
Uh Yeah, I mean, yeah. He's looking to liberate and not
Funny thing, that's exactly the word that he used. China and Russia are not building an alliance. We are building a new global reality. The West must either adapt or disappear. The West wants others to live in perpetual poverty, so banks remain rich. We do not seek to rule the world, only to liberate it from those who believe they own it. Holy shit.
what happens in America, right? We either point the finger at China or we point the finger at Russia. And here we've
Well,
got,
no, it's actually far worse than that. That's just a small piece of it. Now, I don't know if I've ever mentioned it to you in an interview, but I've mentioned it in many other interviews. There is a global conflict going on right now between the debt-based system of the West and the resource-based system of the global East and South.
yeah,
President Xi just said that he understands it and he understands who's behind it, and they're not going to allow it. And what gets even more interesting, and this gets pretty subtle, the next day after Xi came out with his comments, and I just read those to you, the Russians came out and said essentially the same thing. The Russians and the Chinese have gotten together and they've said, look, these people are playing this bullshit game and they're planning on taking over the world and they're planning on ruling everybody, and it ain't going to happen. Okay. We're not going to let the banks destroy the world. And quite bluntly, I believe that between now and October, we're going to have a massive financial collapse. And I believe, it's just my opinion, but a lot of people agree with me, that it's deliberate and it was planned. Have you read or are you familiar with the book called The Great Taking?
I have not read it, but I've watched David Webb a number of
Okay,
times.
okay,
Yep,
so you've got a good idea.
yep,
Basically, in the United States, we've had a set of laws passed that said in a banking crisis, if the banks are about to go under, they can seize all the assets. They can seize the stocks, they can seize the bonds, they can seize the housing, they can seize the cars, they can seize everything that you own.
yep.
Now, that sounds pretty bizarre to me. And I've had a lot of people say I should write about that. And the people who have read the book are really serious about it happening, but it can never happen. Why?
I'm not sure why it can't happen. No,
Okay. Do you own your house?
I don't own a house at the moment. No,
Do you own
I
your
have.
car? Okay. Guy
Well,
comes to you and says,
I've given title to someone else, I think, through the certificate of registration. So I'm not sure.
well, if you own anything, somebody's going to come up to you and say, remember the car or the boat or the airplane or the trophy wife that you owned yesterday? You don't own them anymore. We own them.
Mm,
That's the day the American Revolution starts. Somebody
mm.
comes to me, comes to my house, and says, okay, we own the house now. You need to move your ass out. My question is going to be, really? How big's your gun?
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, the basic idea that you would allow the banks to set up a situation in which they could seize all the assets is so insane. Uh, Somebody would have to be pretty deranged to believe that that was going to happen. So I don't think it's going to happen because I don't think that it can happen. But I do believe the laws are in place. And I have been told, and this makes sense, that back in 2008. And I literally was saying we were minutes away from the entire financial system seizing. And I believed it back then, and I believe it now. And I think that's going to happen again between now and October. But back in 2008, I have been told the banks went to the Fed and said, look, here's the deal. We're going to shut down the whole system. Okay.
Yep.
We're going to stop the world economy, or you're going to bail us out.
Hmm.
Now, that actually makes sense because the United States spent trillions of dollars. We were bailing out institutions all over the world that have nothing to do with the United States. And the reason the United States $37 trillion in debt is we were just throwing money at people. Okay, it's like Biden on Coke.
Yeah,
So,
and they never even said it would get into. They never even used the word trillion back then. They were,
yeah,
it was like 800 billion in TARP, like, and we
right,
thought that was a
right.
crazy number. Now we're talking quadrillions of stuff that's happened, derivatives. And I do want to get into this a little bit. It's more of a just a brainstorming, but you probably have some ideas. I think in terms of what does the average person do to protect themselves against this collapse? Just give me a moment of kind of piecing this all together. Of course, people say, well, you should have some precious metals, right? You should have some real money. You should have things that you can maybe barter or exchange or share or what have you, and have a community. But when everything's tied into the banking system, right? Like even going out, like how do I go and get, let's say things do collapse, and of course, probably at some point, if the dollars collapse, then gold and silver prices go through the roof. What do we exchange with the guy that's selling us? The coin deal is probably not even open, like 'cause it's just chaos, right? But let's say it was. What am I going to give my local coin dealer so that I can end up with some silver and gold? We don't have anything really to exchange. I mean, he's probably got enough coffee, and maybe he's had enough people, exchanging fruits and vegetables, and I don't know what else, right? But I don't know how ultimately the average Joe protects themselves from all of this, because it seems like until we literally break apart from that whole thing and just start caring for each other, as opposed to actually attacking each other, right? Because we're starving potentially, right? I mean, I don't know how bad it's going to get, but let's say it gets apocalyptic, that we're either going to come together as people or we're going to tear each other apart, because this system, I don't know how we get outside of it. So I'm
Well,
wondering what you.
strange enough, the Chinese and the Russians understand it,
Well, when
and
they
they're
said
taking.
that, yeah, if you don't mind, I wanted to say when she made those comments, what exactly did he say? That they don't want to rule the world. You either basically the West, you either come along with us or you vanish, basically, right?
Exactly. Now,
And
I'll be
how
candid.
does the average person in the West go along with them? I guess.
Well, strange enough, what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to educate themselves. They're going to have to educate themselves in a hurry. The Chinese understand there is this global conflict going on between the debt-based system of the West and the resource-based system of the East. The Russians understand there is this global conflict going on. Now, what's interesting to me, and I live south of France in a rural area where they raise food, so it's one of the safest areas in the world because I can always hunker down and I know there's food. Never gets too hot, never gets too cold. But I have had people come to me lately, including a pharmacist who's very young, very beautiful, 57 years old. She came to me and said, "Look, you understand finance. Okay. I am worried about the future of the EU. Where should I go? What should I do? What can I do to protect my financial future?" Um, there are going to be alternatives, but to solve any problem, first of all, you have to define the problem. Okay. If the banks collapse, what is the problem?
Well, what we think is our means of exchange is gone, right? You know, like
No,
if
that's money. That's different.
well, it would be good if we could get rid of the banks, I
Well,
think.
no, strange enough, we actually need banks. But Harvard offers a 4-point plan for determining problems and coming up with solutions. And the first point is, what is the apparent problem? And the apparent problem is the banks have collapsed. And the real problem is the banks collapsed because they were deliberately set up to collapse. One of the possible solutions is to go down to your hardware store. And everybody's talking about going to a coin store and owning gold and silver, but it would be far more effective to go to a hardware store.
Get tools.
No, better. Get about 100-piece length of hemp rope.
They have that at the hardware store?
Yeah, of course. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you look for a tall oak tree.
Okay.
And
Uh-oh.
then you
This
fasten a noose out of your hemp rope. And you find the bastards behind the banks who deliberately destroyed the world's financial system, and you string them up. Okay. As long as there are no consequences for doing evil, people will do evil. Okay. Now, it's amazing to me that the Chinese came out and said, "We know it's the bankers who are doing this. And we are not seeking to control the world," which implies somebody is seeking to control the world. And I believe there is a group, and I believe the oligarchs, okay, want to control the world. And if you look at the dichotomy between where the wealth has changed in the last 10 years, literally in the last 5 years, the percentage of wealth going to the oligarchs is up, I think, 41%, and the percentage of wealth going to everybody below the 1% is down substantially. I read something recently, and you're too old, and I'm too old. What's the biggest financial issue that young people today, say between 25 and 40, what's the biggest financial issue they face?
well, they I home ownership. They want to own a home.
Bingo. Okay. Why don't they go buy a home?
Why don't they?
Yeah, you just said they want to own a
Yeah.
home. I totally agree. Why don't they go buy a home?
Well, they think they're too expensive. They can't afford
Why
it.
do they think they're too expensive?
Because their income isn't going to support those payments. They can't
They
get a
think
mortgage.
they think that housing is too expensive because it is too expensive. Okay.
Okay, yeah, let's
I
get down to the simple stuff here. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Okay,
yeah.
I'm 78. I got married in 1974, and we bought a small 2-bedroom condominium in Stamford, Connecticut, about 30 miles outside New York City. And I think we paid 19 or 20,000. And we could pay the place off in 3 years.
Oh, because
Okay.
of the income. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Do you
Well, I
re
mean, we weren't high income, but it was a $20,000 place. You could afford to pay 20,000. Now the average house is over $400,000. Okay, how
Yeah.
much of an income do you have to afford a $400,000 place? You go to California, you're talking about a million. What we have done is we have transferred an enormous amount of wealth into the hands of the oligarchs. Now, one of the things that I've never understood this, and I'll plead ignorance, don't these guys ever stop being greedy? Doesn't Bill Gates have enough money, or George Soros, or Bezos, or any of those assholes? Do they need every cent in the world? What about everybody else? What about I've got a son who's 45. Okay, he can afford a place because he's a doctor. But his kids, okay, how are they going to afford a place? And the answer is they're not going to be able to. We are on the wrong path. We've been on the wrong path since 1980. There is a group that controls finance in the world, and they're trying to take control. The Chinese understand it, and the Russians understand it, which means the Brazilians understand it, and the Iranians understand it, and they're not going to go for it. So there is going to be chaos, but frankly, holding the bastards who are destroying the financial system responsible would absolutely be the best solution in the world. Now, we need banks. We need some place to deposit money. We need some place to borrow money, and there's legitimate reasons for that. But we've financed our whole economy on debt. Okay, the United States is not $37 trillion in debt. We're way over $200 trillion in debt. And anybody who can work a calculator knows that money is never going to get paid back. And in another 720 from Donald Trump, what did he say he was going to do about government spending?
Yeah, he was going to reduce it.
Okay, and what did he actually do?
Yeah, I mean he did reduce some and increased more than the sum, so
Well,
the net was much higher spending.
exactly.
It was
And
over
and he
three trillion. It was over 3 trillion, 3.5 trillion.
oh
But they
it's
also the debt ceiling in the big beautiful bill went up 5 trillion. And that's the one people don't seem to talk about as much, at least from what I've watched, or listened to, is they automatically have said they're going to spend 5 trillion.
now they automatically said they're going to spend more than 5 trillion.
Well, yeah,
We're not
because
even
we
going
know
to
they
worry
go,
about it,
yeah,
yeah,
because they're going to
until
go
we go over
beyond
five
that.
trillion. So
But
so we have gone into Never Land, and Donald Trump, who ran on a platform of reducing spending. How much is the Pentagon budget going to increase this year?
yeah, I don't know what that number is.
13%.
Yeah.
What?
Well, yeah, but
What?
why? Yeah.
13% for what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, to keep paying everybody for these
Well,
no-show jobs and all kinds of stuff, right? I mean,
uh, it's going to be interesting, and people need to spend a lot of time doing some research and doing some thinking. We are in for bad times. Everything the government tells us is a lie. The oligarchs are totally out of control. They are so greedy that they have set the banking system and the financial system up for failure. And thank God for the Saudis and the Iranians and the Russians and the Chinese who recognize what's going on. And they're saying we don't want to be part of it.
I want to dive into that a little bit.
Okay.
Obviously, this is not news to them. This was it the actual freezing of assets for Russia, say whatever that was 5 years ago.
And that's you used the wrong term. You're
Okay.
talking about the $300 billion.
Okay.
That wasn't freezing. That was stealing.
Yeah. Right.
Okay,
Right.
it was illegal by every possible measure. So let's stop calling it freezing. Let's say the
Okay.
EU and the United States wanted to steal
Yeah.
$300 billion.
Okay, was it the thievery that actually got this whole thing cranked up? Because it's not like Russia and China didn't know that the bankers have been trying to control the world and have been controlling things. They've been controlling them. They've been controlling everything. So this is not new. So what was that the impetus to get this thing started?
That was part of it. What's so interesting about that is that it started a snowball effect. When the United States and NATO went out and stole $300 billion from Russia, they told everybody in the world, okay, if we disagree with you for any reason whatsoever and we can get our hands on your assets, we're going to steal them. And that's a very important message. And it's a message that certainly the Russians understand and certainly the Chinese understand. And to the extent that are they capable of responding? Of course. The amazing thing to me is now I believe this figure is correct. The United States has been responsible for starting 251 wars since the end of World War II. How many are we
Since
better
since
off?
world since the 40s? Wow, that's crazy. What's
Well,
that? What?
at the end of each war, how many of those the United States been better off?
I would say none.
Zero.
Yeah.
Okay. If you want to know what's going to happen to the United States and actually the whole debt-based system of the West, all you have to do is read Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. Uh, Europe is so funny because if the United States is insane, Europe's in a never, never land. There is a video, you can find the video on YouTube of Macron and Metz traveling to Ukraine here a few weeks ago, and Starmer comes into the room. They're in a railroad car. Starmer comes into the room, and when he comes into the room, he brings a photographer with him, and the photographer takes a picture, and Metz has what appears to be a Coke spoon in front of him, and he grabs it and snatches it and hides it. And Macron sees this baggie, or what appears to be a baggie in front of him, and he grabs it and hides it. And what's so funny about this is that, of course, the French media and the German media comes out, oh, no, 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 that was a napkin. Wait a minute. Why does Macron look so guilty?
Mhm.
Okay. I had kids. I didn't have to catch them with their hand in the cookie jar to know they
Right.
were stealing cookies. I could look at them and tell, and everybody who's ever been a parent could look
Yeah,
at their kids and know when they're lying to them.
that's
And
true.
there's Macron who literally got caught with his hand in the cookie jar. And what I've wondered is how can these people in Europe be so stupid when they're trying to destroy their neighbor who's been supplying them with low cost resources so their economy can function? Now, I'm
Yeah.
not saying Russia was doing it as any kind of favor, but Russia is the largest country in the world. It is the richest country in the world in terms of resources.
Resource.
And they
Hmm.
were flooding Europe with inexpensive resources. Why would the Europeans want to destroy Russia? That's insane.
Yeah,
Well,
they would.
there's a simple answer. If you start coming up with really great solutions, like I got an idea. Why don't we bomb Moscow? Why would we do that? Oh, I don't know. But a few days ago, the woman who runs Italy, and I don't know if she's a premier or prime minister or president, I don't know what they call her, but there was another video of her, and she was clearly stoned on
Oh gosh.
something. And I'm
Wow.
thinking, God, I'm starting to understand why these people are so stupid and why
Yeah.
they keep doing these incredibly stupid things. Now, I don't know that Trump uses cocaine, but I know that he's really good at 720-degree turns because he's got so much practice. For him to come out and tell Russia, okay, we're going to supply Ukraine with long-range missiles. Wait a minute. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I would mess with Putin. If the people who are anti Putin and the people who are anti Lavrov and the people who are anti Russia would actually listen to them,
Yep.
those are rational people who have
Yep.
laid out exactly what their policies are, exactly what their opportunities are. Before we had this conversation, I heard a Chinese interviewer doing an interview with the president or the foreign minister of Iran. And I thought, God, this guy is so rational. He's not breathing hard. He's not panting. He's not
Yep.
frothing at the mouth. He's just
Yep.
saying, look, we were attacked and we're going to respond. I thought, damn, that makes sense. So basically what I'm saying is the West, the debt-based system of the West, is run by corrupt oligarchs who are lying, cheating, and stealing at every opportunity. The debt-based system is collapsing. It's going to collapse. And the resource based system of the BRICS is going to overcome it. We are going to be in for some massive, massive changes. However, it's a good thing. Okay. I'll tell you right now, we will never know the top 50 perpetrators who were dealing with Epstein. We will never know because if we knew, there would be a revolution the next day.
Yeah. 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 When it took 60 years, I mean, it didn't take 60 years, but if we don't have a definitive on JFK, we're never going to have a definitive on because
I I
even
I I think
and
we know what happened to JFK.
I feel like I know what happened with JFK,
Yeah, yeah.
but
And strange enough, JFK said he was going to break the CIA into 100 pieces. There's a
yeah.
very famous photograph. Do you remember who was in the vehicle right behind the Kennedy vehicle?
Oh, behind the vehicle? I mean, you mean
Okay, here's the deal.
Secret Service
Uh,
agents you're talking about, or a
no,
car? Another car you're talking about?
John Conley and
Yep, he
his
was.
wife were in
Or
the front of
yep,
the vehicle. Kennedy and Jackie Kennedy were in the back of the
yeah,
vehicle.
yeah. Then the
But
Secret Service agents were in
who
front of.
was in the vehicle immediately behind the JFK vehicle?
I don't know.
Lyndon
Uh,
Johnson.
oh yeah, LBJ. Well, I do own a book. Who killed
Okay,
JFK?
well,
I own that book.
I've read that book, and that
Yeah.
picture is in that book. When the entourage turned the corner onto Daley Plaza, LBJ ducked down
Hmm.
to the floor
Oh, I've
of the
never seen
vehicle.
that. I've never seen that. Wow.
Well, everyone has seen pictures, but very few people have ever looked at the video to see why it's so important. You see pictures
So
of
is there?
both vehicles,
Yeah.
but what you don't realize is LBJ's in the back vehicle, and the reason you don't see him is because he's on the floor.
So he's
Gee,
ducked down because there's a guy behind him that has a gun. Is that?
and in front of him and to the side of him.
So they were in
Okay,
that car
there's so
behind
much.
him. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
there's so much weird stuff. This stuff's been coming out for 50 years. Okay. We know the autopsy was fake. We know that the Zapruder film was fake. We know that there was a person in a Dallas police uniform on the grassy knoll. We know there were people pointing at the grassy knoll saying that's where the shots came from. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll go you one better that's probably you don't know. Do you remember who J.D. Tippit was?
I've heard that name, but I don't remember,
You
no.
have. J.D. Tippit was the policeman that Lee Harvey Oswald supposedly shot before he went into the theater.
Oh, okay. Okay.
There was something very noteworthy about J.D. Tippit.
Yeah, I did see something on that once. Yeah.
He was a dead ringer for Kennedy.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So when a body
Oh,
was shipped to Washington for autopsy,
it
could have
wasn't.
been J.D. Tippit.
It could have been Tippett.
So
Okay.
once you realize, and of course that was 63 years ago, once you realize that the crime and corruption was very real 63 years ago, none of what we've talked about today seems outrageous at all. It seems
No.
like, oh yeah, of course, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I
assassinations, murder.
just on a side note, it really doesn't explain much, but have you ever seen the video of the first black Secret Service agent that worked at the White House?
No.
He tells a story that one day a limo pulls up to the White House and LBJ gets out and he storms off. And I guess he even asked like somebody like, who is that guy, that Secret Service agent? Because there had not been a black yet at that time. And so they said he's a Secret Service agent. This, whatever, he ended up outside, this agent outside the Oval Office, and JFK and RFK were in there, and there was a lot of expletives, and LBJ had gone in, and the door was shut, and so forth. And then supposedly the door opens, and LBJ comes out, and he turns back towards the door and says, "Don't fuck with me." I mean, he was a criminal. There is no doubt about the fact that he had a team of people and they were criminals and they got rid of people.
Well,
He was a bad dude.
LBJ had his own personal assassin who worked for him.
Hmm.
Okay. There was an interesting situation. There was either a judge or a lawmaker that was suing LBJ, and he was shot in the back 3 times, and the coroner decided it was suicide.
Sorry, I
And
should not laugh. Oh my gosh.
LBJ's sister was going to blow the whistle on LBJ for all of its corruption. And I was going through school in Fort Worth. We knew about all that stuff. Texas is a really small community. And
Mm.
uh, LBJ's sister was murdered
Yep.
by
Shut
the
her up
same
too.
guy whose fingerprint ended up
Was
on the rifle in the school book depository who worked for LBJ as his personal assassin.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
Yeah.
some really sick stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
So I
I
have a
grew
question
up,
for you. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, you want, well, let me just ask you because you were in Vietnam and did all those missions. Was there a was there a helicopter called the Bell helicopter that was,
yeah, of course.
and they were many of them shot down, I would imagine.
There were 10,000 aircraft shot down in Vietnam. About 9,000 of them were helicopters.
Who owned at least part of Bell helicopter?
Uh, John Conley and LBJ and the head of the Fort Worth Commerce Bank.
Wow, that's more than I expected and more than I even know, but I
Okay,
knew
I
that
I
LBJ
saw,
did.
yeah,
Yeah.
I saw John F. Kennedy the night before he was killed.
Wow. Okay.
He flew into Carswell Air Force Base, and his entourage drove him into downtown Fort Worth, and he spent the night in downtown Fort Worth, and then the next day he went back out to Carswell, flew 30 miles over to Dallas Love Field. Okay, uh, we knew all that stuff. Okay, I'll tell you something that's interesting. It'll give you an idea of how things have changed now. In 1965, do you have any idea of who the highest public paid official in the United States was? Okay, it was the sheriff of Biloxi County, Mississippi, Harrison County. Okay. Uh, I was going through flight training in Pensacola and in Meridian, Mississippi. And Life magazine had a story about the election in Harrison County, where Biloxi was. And the the number one candidate for sheriff was assassinated. And the story was that the number three candidate went to the number two candidate and said, "Do you really want to be sheriff of Biloxi?" Number two candidates, well, after careful reconsideration, I've decided I've got more important things to do. So I go through flight training. I'm in Meridian. It's really funny because I was 18 years old when I was going through flight training, and the drinking age was 21. There was no liquor by the drink in Mississippi. So if you wanted some booze, where did you get your booze?
Some guy making it in his bathtub. I don't know.
Oh, God, no, that's disgusting. No, you call a sheriff,
Oh.
and the sheriff had a step van, and it was loaded with booze, and he would drive onto the base in Meridian, Mississippi, NES Meridian, and he would deliver the booze to you. My first weekend in Meridian, my roommate, and this is a guy that I had known for almost a year before from Camp Pendleton and then
Oh,
Pensacola.
okay.
My roommate said, "You want to go into town and have a drink?" And I said, "Woody, we can't have a drink. This is Mississippi. They don't have liquor by the drink." He said, "Bob, watch my lips. You want to go in town and have a drink?" I said, "Well, sure, Woody. I'd kind of like that." So we jump in his car, we drive into town, and we pull up right next to what looked to be a roadside tavern. And we walk inside and look around. It looks just like a bar.
Hmm.
So we sat down, and this very pretty, buxom female comes over, leans over, and says, "What would you boys like to have to drink?" And I showed her that I was 18
Mhm.
by my answer. Woody said, "Okay, I want a Pabst beer." I looked up at her and said, "What do you have?" She laughed, of course, because she had run into other 18-year-olds just as stupid as I was. So Woody and I were sitting there having our drink, and Woody said, "You want to gamble, Bob?" And by now, I figured out what time it is. So I said, "Well, yeah, sure." So we go in to a room next door, and there is a gambling casino. So I lean over to Woody and I said, Woody, this is all illegal. And he said, who do you think owns it, Bob? I said, I don't know. He said, the sheriff. Really? Yep. So, as an interesting side note, in my last year in high school, my advanced mathematics teacher ran out of things to teach us. So he spent 6 weeks going over probability and permutations. And the very best way to study probability and permutations is by use of a pair of dice. And I happen to know all the odds and all the combinations of dice, and I happen to be very good at understanding shooting craps. So as a 18 and 19-year-old cadet making 147.50 a month, I financed my way through flight training shooting craps in an illegal crap game in an illegal casino in an illegal bar owned by the sheriff.
That's a wild story. Wow. Impressive. Hey, can I just say a little bit about this idea that we need banks, because I do often uh put out the caveat that this is not a perfect system. I use permanent whole life insurance to help people become their own banker. I don't know if you've ever looked into anything that I do, but the idea is that we are letting a lot of money flow away from us. So, insurance companies don't want you to call premium payments deposits. But in essence, we are depositing our money in there and we have access to it as cash value. And of course, there's a death benefit that's associated, but that's not the focus. And you never touch your money. You always leverage it by borrowing from the insurance company. And then you pay them back and you free up that principal amount again, but you continue to pay premiums, so you're continuing to grow. And historically, though they don't guarantee them, and they've been paying them for over 100 years consecutively, they pay dividends. So again, it's not an investment other than it's an investment in your own banking system. So I say banking system, but of course, people's cash flow have to go through a bank that then goes to the insurance company, right, to pay premiums. And then when you want to leverage your cash value, you have to move the money through a commercial bank. You have to say, I'll take a loan, and they send it to your bank. Well, Glass-Steagall, of course, they let, the mixture of Wall Street and investing and it just freeing up this idea that if they let the insurance company just send you the money directly, I mean, we don't have real money. We don't, it has to go through this banking system because it's all debt money, right? And in
That's an exceptionally important point. We do not need the banking system as it exists today, and there are other solutions. And Glass-Steagall was really important because it separated the the banks as banking functions from the banks as casinos. And
right.
once Glass-Steagall was repealed under the Clinton administration, the
Yeah.
banks could become casinos. And this is all deliberate. It's like student loans. The
Yes.
purpose of student loans was not to give an education to students, it
Yep.
was to hand all their assets until they die over
Yep.
to the banks. Anybody could get any amount of money whatsoever for courses and degrees in underwater basket weaving. And we have an entire generation or two of overeducated children who have no real skills who are
Mhm.
in debt, and the number of people over 60 who are still in debt, in student debt, is an absolutely staggering amount. And what's really scary about that is the key to student debt is you cannot discharge the debt in bankruptcy. Now, you can eliminate the whole problem by eliminating the debt in bankruptcy, but of course, the banks don't want you to do that. So, the banks literally control the economy of the United States. The military industrial complex is a giant part of it. A very small group of people uh, control the finances of the world, and they're screwing it up. And strange enough, people in Russia and China and India have identified this and they're starting to take actions. And actually, it's all coming to a head now. And there's going to be some interesting things happen between now and October.
Hmm. Interesting. Interesting things. So I want to just continue that thought about the student loans back to your buying a home back in 73, was it? Or
Yeah,
74?
yeah.
74. So I was in debt around 13 or 14,000 after I went to college. I pretty much financed everything. You know, school wasn't that expensive back then. I think it was less than $5,000 a year. So I was pretty much, that was the only way I was going to go to
That
college, right?
that would have been a pretty expensive college. I went to the University of Texas and to Southern Methodist and to Columbia. None of them cost that much.
Yeah, it's state colleges like I think Vermont may still be the most expensive state in-state tuition. And New Hampshire's not that far behind, you know. But my point is, when I got out of college, you could get a job and you're gonna make 20,000. So you could in a single year, at least your gross pay was bigger than the debt you had. But we know kids are coming out of college now with 200,000. Even if we said they only, mom and dad helped out a lot, took their resources, did whatever, and they only came out with 100,000 because there's tons of schools that are over 50,000 and there's some that are over 80,000 now. But let's just
No, no,
per
strange enough,
year. So
there's
you've got nowhere near the kind of income. Like I had a bigger number in my income than what I had in a total amount of debt. I mean, how many kids are coming out of school even making 100 grand right away? And they have at least 100 grand in debt in student loans. So back to this idea of, well, yeah, they don't want to allow like an insurance company to be a bank. But how do we even get the money? Like because and now we're going towards these stable coins. That's a whole nother discussion, I think, for you and I. Because
no, 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 no. You just missed something.
what's that?
Uh, who came out the day before the inauguration with his own meme coin?
Yeah, it was Trump.
Okay. Who sells $499 gold cell phones?
Oh, I don't know.
That would be Donald Trump.
Really?
Who sells $249 cologne or perfume?
I guess it's Donald Trump.
Now, if you think that Donald Trump looks at the presidency as a business opportunity, you would
I'd be right.
probably be correct. When
Yeah.
I heard about the meme coins, I just went, that's obscene. Okay, this is a guy that claims to be a billionaire. Okay, what's he doing pimping uh, electronic beanie babies? And then when I saw a $499 gold cell phone, it's probably a $29 Chinese knockoff. Okay.
Right,
Who
right. Of
pays
course.
$499 for a cell phone today? And then
Yeah.
$249 for perfume or what?
Yeah.
I mean, Donald Trump has sold the presidency.
Yeah.
And there's something obscene about that. And I'll go back to what I've said many times. The United States is an empire that is collapsing.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah.
you get the fools at the end of empire. If you go back to the first century BC or the first century AD, Rome actually had some decent leaders. If you go back to 300 or 400 AD, that's when you got all the fools. There was one year and in which there were three emperors because one emperor gets killed by a Praetorian Guard, and then they go up to the next emperor. They say, okay, we need a raise. And he said, buzz off. So they killed him. Okay. We're
Yeah.
in the same position now. We've got the Secret Service guarding Hunter Biden while he's soliciting hookers and smoking crack. What?
Yeah.
Where'd that come from?
Yeah.
Okay. What kind of
Back to this.
universe are we living in?
Yeah, back to this, and I don't know that much about it. I mean, I understand there's this Genius Act, and the Treasury is involved in the stable coins, and to me, it sounds like another derivative, right? That we're
Of
gonna
course.
we're
Of
gonna
course.
we're gonna because supposedly, at least the monetary side of it, stable coins there's supposed to be a dollar behind every one of them, and I'm like,
Right.
yeah, but now you're gonna sell this other thing to
Right.
extract more money.
Right.
And,
Right.
and and that to me was the whole reason that Bitcoin has been what it's been and grown the way it's grown because you suck in the masses and they
Of
get this
course.
mentality of these coins that aren't even real, right? And we're just again extracting more from the average man and woman.
Here's where it gets beautiful.
You
What is
okay.
the total value of the 15,000 Bitcoin derivatives?
Um, has it exceeded the value of all the known gold in the world or
Oh,
no?
Christ, yeah. 4
Yeah.
trillion.
Wow. Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
And strange enough, what I do is I ask myself, in any investment, how much of it is speculation and how much of it is utility? So, what is the amount of speculation in one Bitcoin as a percentage?
100%.
Nope,
Okay.
nope. It's only 98%. It has 2% utility.
Okay.
You can always take it and print it and wipe your ass with it.
Okay.
Actually, you can't.
Yeah, yeah, that might be
Actually,
important
that's
if we
right.
run out of toilet paper again.
Yeah, but then it's the paper that's valuable. It's not the Bitcoin. I mean, isn't Bitcoin really a bunch of numbers?
Well,
Have we
yeah.
assigned value to a bunch of numbers you can't see, you can't hold, you can't touch?
Yeah, ones and zeros,
I
right?
I I, I think we have. I think
Yeah.
that's exactly. Oh well, hell, what could go wrong?
Yeah. Well, I just did a recording with a gentleman named Michael McKibben. Have you ever heard of him?
I don't think so.
Yeah. So he's um even been proven his technology was proven to be the father of social networking, but it was stolen from him by his attorney, his patent attorney, who was part of what he calls the British Pilgrim Society. But basically, I'll fast forward. he's now teamed with a group that are encryption specialists, mathematicians, and he's come up with something called a polymorphic encryption technology. And he says it takes three lifetimes of the universe for someone to be able to crack this, right? Because nobody ever has both sides of the equation, the sender and the receiver, until they come together, and then they get a file sent to them and it disappears. But what he's shown with some of his technologies, everything that they've said is secure, it's not secure. That the
Well, strange
technology,
enough, the latest computers can break
yeah,
the whole code.
yeah, the AES 256 bit. I mean, that's been cracked for years, and every email system is crackable, even Proton Mail, all the stuff they say, right? But what he's saying ultimately is that was built into the server technology in the late 80s and early 90s, and there is a key that a single key that can get into the back door of any system unless you use something like this technology that he's just coming out with. And to me, that is what is happening. Sometimes people forget their passwords, but sometimes, and a lot of people aren't going to admit, like, I wasted a lot of money. I just somehow my Bitcoin disappeared or whatever, even other cryptocurrencies. But it's funny to me that, well, it's not funny. It's quite a coincidence that right around 2008, 2009 is when Bitcoin kind of started hitting the scene. There was a book that came out in 2009. And of course, Epstein was supposedly involved in promoting it. And he was the one that said it's better than gold. And they've been using that narrative for a long time. But they created all this new money. And where does the money go? It goes in many places. But how do you keep the world from overinflating? You come up with a new asset class. They came up with a whole new asset class that's really thin air again. It's ones and zeros. So I do believe that one more time they're gonna just extract it from people. They're gonna pull the rug
They're
out.
going to try to, and they've been trying it for 1,000 years, and they've been failing for 1,000 years, and it will get very bloody and ugly. But people are starting to wake up, and I was really quite impressed by Xi and by the Russians when they came out and said, "Okay, we know who the problem is, and
Mhm.
we're not going to go along with that." So we are in for some interesting times. Meanwhile, Donald Trump keeps coming up with his 180 of the day again and again and again. But on his tombstone is going to be written, "Jeffrey Epstein was my best friend."
So did you say you think by like October or November we're going to see some
I
really?
think there will be a major crash. It's just my opinion. I think there will be a major crash. I think we have hit the limit. I think that there are so many things in flux right now that it's impossible to predict what's going to happen. However, something bad is going to happen.
So I think in an interview I watched, I don't recall who it was, but you were on and you said, to be a good investor, you just have to follow one. I think it was something. I hope I'm not over speaking here, speaking out of turn, that if you want to be a good investor, just follow the greatest investor of all time and what he's doing, right? And he's got a lot of
Right,
money,
right,
a lot
right.
of money in cash. but his cash is mostly in short-term treasuries, right? I mean, he's not
Right,
sitting there with piles of and so I feel like that's the common man doesn't really understand, like, what do you mean I should take stuff off the table? I should take some of those chips that you're winning at the craps, right? You don't actually win until you put that in your pocket, right? And walk
right,
away,
right,
right? Or cash those in. But if you just keep playing, and so they don't know where to put the money, Bob. Like they are they gonna go out and buy treasury bills? And that's where, hey, it's a plug for my own thinking that hey, the average Joe and Mary can go and put some of this in this permanent whole life insurance because there is a way to structure it that there's a lot more cash, liquid cash value that they can access, that they can leverage. Because they're not going to go out. I mean, you can go out and buy a some US bond, I guess, like people used to do, right? And give those as gifts and everything. But when people think about somebody being in cash like Warren Buffett, right? He's got more in cash or treasuries than he does in equities, I believe, at this point. But I'm not 100% sure about that. Maybe you know.
he's got a lot. Okay, at strange enough, a very very valid point. At your point about the whole life insurance, there are alternatives, and there are certainly alternatives people need to think about. And I have had several people come to me here. A lot of people recognize something very bad is coming. Okay. And I've got people who want me to help them with financial advice. Now, my solution is quite simple. I was buying gold originally at $35 an ounce. I was buying silver at $1.29 an ounce. I have a boatload of silver and gold. Okay. I've got a boatload of platinum. I've got tons of resource stocks, including stocks, some stocks that have gone up 50% the last 2 weeks. But I
Wow.
have a lot more access to information than most people just because I've got a lot more free time than
Yeah.
most people.
Yeah.
But you need to do something that is safe. And too many people and some really intelligent people that I know are falling into the Bitcoin trap. And
Yeah.
it is a trap, it's a mouse trap. And when you go for the cheese, it's going to break your back. Okay.
Yeah.
That whole $4 trillion was designed to dissolve, and it's going to dissolve very quickly.
Yeah. I did send you a note, and I'm gonna say we should wrap this up, but I did send you a note when we first agreed to do this call, and I mentioned the big beautiful bill and Palantir, and yeah,
No,
but
no,
maybe
you called it the Big Beautiful Bill. We're going to change the name.
oh, good, good.
I like the initials because it's really easy to remember. We're going to call it Build Back Better
Oh my
because
God.
then we understand
Oh,
exactly what it is.
oh
But
my God.
Palantir is one of the most dangerous things I've ever heard. The
Yeah,
idea that the United States government would have access to all information about citizens, uh,
yeah.
it's not a good idea.
No,
Those
I mean,
people, politicians are sociopaths, not
mhm,
some of them, all of them.
mhm.
They have traded everything for power, and
Yeah,
that's very dangerous.
yeah, yeah. So until next time, I think that would be something we should dive into, and maybe even offline we can share some things that I'm trying to help people protect themselves with some. some of this technology, even from Michael McGibbon, Leader Technologies is the name of the company. Um, but I really appreciate this conversation. Is it just like every other one, and you always got me smiling, even amongst some bad shit going on. So thank you for that, Bob. Yeah,
Okay, John, it's always a pleasure.
thank you so much. Enjoy your day, or the rest of
Super deal.
it.
Okay, bye.
Be well. Yes. Talk again. Bye.